Walking through the streets of Tenochtitlan in 1519, you'd hear the rumble of thousands of voices long before you saw the massive sprawl of the Great Market. Picture this: 60,000 people crammed into one place, buying, selling, arguing, and bargaining under the blazing Mexican sun. That's more people than most entire cities had back then, all gathered in one enormous open-air shopping centre that would make modern malls look like corner stores. The Spanish conquistadors couldn't believe their eyes when they first witnessed this spectacle. These were guys who'd travelled across an ocean, seen the great markets of Europe, and conquered their way through the Caribbean. But nothing had prepared them for what they found in the heart of the Aztec Empire. One conquistador wrote that the market was so vast and well organised that it seemed like a complete city built just for commerce. Talk about first impressions that stick with you. What made this market truly incredible wasn't just its size, though trust me, the numbers alone were staggering. It was how perfectly organised the whole chaotic mess actually was. Every single type of merchandise had its own designated section, like some ancient version of department store organisation. You didn't wander around randomly, hoping to stumble across what you needed. Instead, you knew exactly where to go for corn, where to find jaguar pelts, and where the obsidian blade dealers set up shop. The market operated on a schedule that would put modern retail chains to shame. Every fifth day, the great tianguis would transform the central plaza into a commercial wonderland that drew traders from hundreds of miles away. But here's the thing that really gets interesting. This wasn't just about buying groceries or picking up household supplies. This was the beating heart of Aztec civilization, where everything that mattered in their world came together in one incredible display of human organization and ingenuity. Let's start with something that might surprise you. The Aztecs had figured out crowd control better than most modern concerts. With 60,000 people flowing through the market on busy days, you'd expect complete chaos. Instead, they developed a system of official supervisors who kept everything running smoothly. These weren't just random volunteers with good intentions. They were trained professionals whose job was making sure the market didn't turn into a massive riot. The supervisors had real authority too. They could settle disputes, enforce trading rules, and kick out troublemakers who were disrupting business. One Spanish observer noted that these officials were so respected that a simple gesture from them could stop an argument between merchants instantly. It was like having more security guards, except these guys actually commanded respect and knew what they were doing. Walking through the market meant navigating a carefully planned grid system that put modern urban planning to shame. The main thoroughfares were wide enough for crowds to flow without getting trampled, while smaller pathways branched off to specialized sections. You could follow the smell of roasting corn to the food vendors, listen for the sound of hammering to find the metalworkers, or just follow the crowds of people admiring bright feathers to locate the luxury goods section. The organization extended to the vendors themselves. Merchants selling similar products clustered together, creating specialized districts within the larger market. This wasn't just convenient for shoppers, it was brilliant business strategy. Competition kept prices fair, customers knew exactly where to go for comparisons, and vendors could learn from each other's techniques. The corn sellers all set up in one area, the pottery makers claimed another section, and the exotic bird dealers had their own corner of commercial paradise. But what really made this system work was something most people overlook: the incredible variety of what was actually for sale. We're not talking about a few basic necessities scattered around random stalls. This market offered everything you could possibly imagine needing, plus plenty of things you never knew existed. Fresh produce filled entire sections with pyramids of corn, beans, squash, and chilies that would make modern farmers' markets look pathetic by comparison. The meat section alone was like stepping into a zoological wonderland. Vendors sold turkeys, lots of turkeys, since they were a staple protein source. But they also offered deer, rabbits, ducks, and even turtles for customers with more adventurous tastes. Some stalls specialized in exotic meats that Spanish conquistadors had never even heard of, creating a protein marketplace that covered everything from everyday dinner ingredients to special occasion delicacies. Then there were the luxury goods that really made Spanish eyes pop out of their heads. Jaguar pelts draped over wooden displays created an impressive backdrop for merchants hawking the finest animal skins. Bright tropical bird feathers were arranged in stunning displays that caught sunlight like natural jewels. Gold ornaments glittered from vendor stalls, crafted into intricate designs that demonstrated the incredible skill of Aztec metalworkers. The obsidian blade section was particularly impressive, and probably a little intimidating for first-time visitors. These weren't just tools, they were works of art. Aztec craftsmen could create obsidian blades so sharp they could cut through flesh cleaner than modern surgical instruments. Vendors displayed everything from simple cutting tools to elaborate ceremonial weapons that looked more like sculptures than practical implements. What made all this commerce possible was a trading system that worked without a single coin changing hands. The Aztecs had figured out something that modern economists spend years studying: how to create a functional economy based entirely on barter and commodity exchange. Most trades happened through direct swapping, your corn for my pottery, my feathers for your obsidian tools, but they weren't completely primitive about it. For smaller transactions and making change, they used cocoa beans as a standardized currency. These weren't just random beans either. They had established exchange rates and quality standards that everybody understood. A tomato might cost you 4 cocoa beans, while hiring a porter to carry your purchases could run you 20 beans for the day. The cocoa bean system was genius in its simplicity. Unlike heavy metal coins, the beans were light and easy to carry. Unlike paper money, they had real value. You could always eat them if times got tough, though that would be like spending your savings account on a snack. The beans were small enough for tiny purchases, but valuable enough that you could buy substantial items with reasonable quantities. This currency system enabled all sorts of interesting economic activity that went far beyond simple shopping. You could hire services right there in the market. Barbers who'd trim your hair while you waited, porters who'd carry your heavy purchases home, even scribes who'd write letters for customers who couldn't read or write. The market became a complete economic ecosystem where anything you needed was available for the right price in beans or trade goods. Food vendors added another layer of complexity to the whole operation. This wasn't just a place to buy ingredients. It was where you went for ready-made meals too. The smell of cooking food mixed with the sense of fresh produce, creating an aromatic experience that probably made shopping there as much about the senses as about actual purchasing. Vendors sold hot cornatole, a nutritious drink that was like an ancient version of a protein shake, perfect for busy shoppers who needed energy to keep browsing. The most shocking aspect for Spanish visitors was probably the slave market. Yes, slavery existed in Aztec society, and the Great Market included a section where human beings were bought and sold like any other commodity. This wasn't necessarily the brutal chattel slavery that Europeans would later perfect in the Americas, but it was still a jarring reminder that this impressive commercial system operated within a very different moral framework than modern markets. The slave trade in the market operated under strict regulations that would surprise anyone expecting chaos or cruelty. Slaves weren't just grabbed randomly and thrown into cages, like some Hollywood depiction of ancient barbarism. Instead, the system worked more like a regulated labor exchange with rules that protected both buyers and sellers. Most slaves were people who'd fallen into debt, been captured in warfare, or chosen slavery as an alternative to starvation during hard times. What made this system particularly interesting was how temporary it often was. Many slaves could work their way to freedom, and some even became successful merchants themselves after earning enough to buy their independence. The Spanish chroniclers noted that slaves in the market often looked healthier and better dressed than poor people in European cities. Talk about challenging your expectations about ancient civilizations. The slave dealers had their own section of the market, complete with official inspectors who made sure the merchandise was accurately represented. Buyers could examine potential purchases, ask about their skills, and even negotiate payment plans. Some slaves specialized in particular trades. Skilled craftsmen, experienced farmers, or educated scribes commanded higher prices than general laborers. It was like a job fair, except the jobs came with people attached. But let's move away from that unsettling aspect and focus on something more appetizing, the incredible food culture that flourished in every corner of the market. The variety of edible options would make modern food courts look like sad vending machine collections. Vendors specialized in different types of corn preparations alone. There were dozens of ways to turn this staple grain into completely different eating experiences. Chili peppers created their own rainbow of heat and flavor across multiple stalls. Vendors offered everything from mild, sweet varieties that added color to dishes to varieties so hot they could probably strip paint off buildings. The Spanish quickly learned that asking for the mildest option available was still like volunteering to breathe fire for the next hour. Aztec taste buds were apparently made of stronger stuff than European palates. Chocolate made its first appearance to European eyes in this market, though not in the form anyone would recognize today. The Aztecs prepared chocolate as a bitter drink, often mixed with spices that created flavor combinations no modern hot chocolate could match. Some vendors sold the raw cacao beans, others offered different spice blends, and the most skilled prepared fresh chocolate drinks right in front of customers. The pottery section deserved its own tour guide. Aztec ceramics weren't just functional items, they were artistic masterpieces that served practical purposes. Vendors displayed elaborate serving dishes decorated with intricate patterns, water jugs shaped like animals, and cooking pots designed for specific types of food preparation. The Spanish noted that even everyday dishes were more beautiful than the finest ceramics available in European royal courts. Textile vendors created visual spectacles that could compete with any modern fashion show. Aztec weavers had mastered techniques for creating fabrics with complex patterns and brilliant colors that European textile workers couldn't reproduce. Cotton cloth was woven so finely it felt like silk, while rougher fabrics served practical purposes for working people. The dyework alone represented a chemistry knowledge that took Europeans decades to figure out. The featherworkers occupied a special place in the market hierarchy. These weren't just people selling pretty bird feathers. They were artists who created elaborate headdresses, ceremonial costumes, and decorative panels that turned feathers into something resembling living paintings. The most skilled featherworkers commanded respect similar to master painters in European society. Jewelry vendors offered everything from simple personal ornaments to elaborate ceremonial pieces that demonstrated the sophisticated metalworking skills Aztec craftsmen had developed. Goldwork was particularly impressive, but they also created beautiful items from silver, copper, and various alloys. Some pieces incorporated precious stones in ways that created combinations of materials no European jeweler had imagined. The tool and weapon section showcased the practical side of Aztec technology. Beyond the famous obsidian blades, vendors sold farming implements, hunting equipment, and household tools that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of materials and engineering. Some tools were so well designed that Spanish colonists continued using them for decades after the conquest. Medicine vendors created their own specialized marketplace within the larger market. Aztec medical knowledge was surprisingly advanced, and healers sold everything from basic herbs to complex preparations for specific ailments. Some vendors specialized in surgical instruments, others in diagnostic tools, and the most skilled offered consultation services right there in the market. The book section, yes, they had books, offered codices written on bark paper that recorded everything from historical events to astronomical calculations. These weren't books in the European sense, but folded manuscripts with pictographic writing that conveyed complex information. Scribes sold custom writing services for people who needed contracts, letters, or official documents. Transportation services added another layer of economic activity to the market experience. Professional porters offered to carry heavy purchases. Guides helped visitors navigate the complex layout, and even primitive taxi services existed for people who needed to travel longer distances with their goods. Some enterprising vendors offered storage services for customers who wanted to continue shopping without carrying everything around. The entertainment section proved that even ancient markets understood the value of keeping customers happy and engaged. Musicians played instruments, storytellers recounted historical tales, and performers demonstrated various skills. Some vendors combined entertainment with sales, creating shows that drew crowds and showcased their products simultaneously. But perhaps the most impressive aspect of this entire commercial ecosystem was how it handled quality control and customer satisfaction. The market supervisors didn't just keep order, they also enforced standards that protected buyers from fraud. Vendors caught selling inferior goods or cheating customers faced serious consequences that could include banishment from the market permanently. This quality assurance system extended to weight and measure standards that were remarkably consistent across all vendors. Official inspectors carried standardized measuring tools and would check vendor scales regularly. The Spanish noted that Aztec merchants were more honest in their dealings than most European traders, probably because the consequences for cheating were so severe. The market even had its own dispute resolution system that worked faster than modern small claims courts. When disagreements arose between buyers and sellers, trained mediators would hear both sides and make binding decisions on the spot. This kept commerce flowing smoothly and prevented minor disagreements from escalating into major disruptions. The credit system that operated throughout the market would impress modern financial analysts. Established merchants could extend credit to regular customers, creating complex webs of debt and obligation that sometimes lasted for months. These weren't casual handshake deals either. Scribes would record credit agreements on bark paper, creating official documents that could be enforced through the market's legal system. Some vendors specialized entirely in credit transactions, essentially operating as ancient banks that facilitated trade between customers who couldn't pay immediately and merchants who needed cash flow. What made this credit system really fascinating was how it incorporated social relationships into business dealings. Your reputation in the community directly affected your credit rating, and defaulting on debts could destroy your social standing permanently. Merchants would actually investigate potential credit customers by asking around about their character, family connections, and payment history. It was like having a credit bureau run entirely on gossip and personal recommendations. The seasonal nature of the market created its own rhythm that governed life throughout the entire valley. During harvest times, the agricultural sections would overflow with fresh produce, creating abundance that drove prices down and allowed people to stock up for leaner months. But during the dry season, these same sections might be nearly empty, pushing prices up and forcing customers to rely on preserved foods and stored goods. Smart merchants learned to read these seasonal patterns like ancient commodity traders. They'd buy up surplus corn during harvest season, store it properly, and sell it at premium prices when fresh supplies ran low. Some vendors became wealthy simply by understanding timing better than their competitors. The most successful merchants weren't necessarily the ones with the best products. They were the ones who knew exactly when to buy and when to sell. The international trade connections that flowed through this market were absolutely mind-blowing for their time. Goods arrived from regions hundreds of miles away, carried by professional merchant networks that operated like ancient shipping companies. Tropical birds from the south, seashells from distant coasts, precious stones from mountain regions, all of this exotic merchandise found its way to the central market through trade routes that rivaled anything Europeans had established. These long-distance traders were celebrities in their own right. When a major merchant caravan arrived with goods from far-off lands, word would spread through the market faster than wildfire. Customers would flock to see what exotic items had made the journey, creating instant crowds around the most interesting merchandise. Some traders built their entire reputation on being able to acquire items that nobody else could get. The timing of these merchant arrivals wasn't random either. Professional traders coordinated their schedules with market days, ensuring they'd arrive when the maximum number of customers would be present. They understood that presentation mattered just as much as product quality. Exotic goods needed to be displayed properly to command premium prices. Religious elements wove through every aspect of market life in ways that would seem strange to modern shoppers. Many vendors would start their day by making small offerings to gods associated with commerce and prosperity. Some stalls included tiny shrines where customers could leave offerings before making major purchases. The market supervisors often began each market day with ceremonies designed to ensure fair trading and peaceful interactions. These religious practices weren't just superstition. They served practical purposes in maintaining market order. When everyone believed that cheating customers would anger the gods, it created additional pressure for honest dealing beyond just the threat of human punishment. Some vendors specialized in selling religious items needed for these commercial ceremonies, creating a whole subsection of the market dedicated to spiritual commerce. The apprenticeship system that operated within the market created opportunities for social mobility that were rare in most ancient societies. Young people could attach themselves to successful merchants, learning not just specific trades, but also the complex skills needed for successful commerce. These apprenticeships often lasted for years, creating mentor relationships that could launch entire careers. What made these apprenticeships particularly valuable was how they provided education that went far beyond simple job training. Apprentice merchants learned mathematics, geography, languages, and negotiation skills that were essential for success in long-distance trade. Some apprentices eventually became more successful than their masters, creating success stories that inspired other young people to seek similar opportunities. The most successful apprentices often specialized in specific types of merchandise, becoming experts in particular trade goods. Some focused on textiles, learning every aspect of fabric production and trade. Others specialized in precious metals, developing the technical knowledge needed to evaluate and price gold and silver items. The market rewarded expertise with higher profits and better reputation. Communication systems within the market operated with efficiency that would impress modern logistics managers. Information about prices, product availability, and market conditions spread through informal networks faster than official announcements. Vendors developed their own signals and codes for communicating with regular customers about special deals or hard-to-find items. The most interesting aspect of market communication was how it extended beyond just commercial information. The market served as a news distribution center where information about political events, military campaigns, and social changes spread throughout the region. Merchants traveling from distant areas brought news along with their goods, making the market a crucial source of information about the wider world. Some vendors actually specialized in information trading, selling news and rumors alongside their physical merchandise. These information brokers developed networks of contacts throughout the region, creating primitive intelligence services that kept customers informed about events that might affect their lives and businesses. Knowledge was literally a commodity that could be bought and sold like any other product. The waste management system that kept this massive commercial operation functioning would surprise anyone expecting ancient squalor. With 60,000 people generating refuse every market day, the Aztecs had developed sophisticated methods for keeping the area clean and sanitary. Professional cleanup crews worked constantly during market hours, removing garbage and maintaining pathways. Food waste was collected and distributed to pig farmers outside the city, creating recycling systems that turned market refuse into useful resources. Broken pottery and damaged goods were collected by specialist vendors who repaired and resold them at reduced prices. Even human waste was managed through organized systems that prevented the sanitation disasters that plagued many ancient cities. The market's impact on surrounding neighborhoods created economic ripple effects that extended far beyond the central plaza. Nearby areas developed into service districts where merchants could find lodging, storage facilities, and specialized services needed for successful trading. Some neighborhoods became entirely dependent on market-related activities, creating economic relationships that lasted for generations. Professional guilds operated within the market like ancient trade unions, protecting the interests of specific types of merchants while maintaining quality standards that kept customers happy. These weren't loose associations of people who happened to sell similar things. They were organized groups with strict membership requirements, established territories within the market, and the power to exclude competitors who didn't meet their standards. The Featherworker Guild was probably the most exclusive, since their craft required years of training and access to rare materials. Members jealously guarded their techniques for creating elaborate headdresses and ceremonial costumes that could take months to complete. New members had to prove their skills through elaborate tests that demonstrated mastery of everything from a feather selection to complex assembly techniques. Pottery guilds controlled entire sections of the market, with different groups specializing in specific types of ceramics. Some focused on everyday cooking vessels, while others created elaborate ceremonial pieces that only the wealthy could afford. The most skilled pottery guild members could command prices that rivaled precious metal workers, especially for pieces that incorporated complex artistic designs. What made these guilds really powerful was their ability to control supply and maintain pricing standards. When a particular type of merchandise became too common, guild leaders would coordinate production limits that kept prices stable. They understood market economics in ways that would impress modern business schools, using collective action to protect their members' livelihoods. The guild system also provided social safety nets for members who fell on hard times. When a pottery maker's workshop burned down or a textile merchant lost a major shipment to bandits, guild members would contribute resources to help rebuild. These mutual aid societies ensured that temporary setbacks didn't destroy entire careers. Training within guilds followed structured programs that could last decades. Master craftsmen would take on apprentices who started with the most basic tasks: sweeping workshops, carrying materials, watching techniques, without being allowed to try them. Gradually, apprentices would earn the right to handle more complex work, progressing through clearly defined skill levels. The most ambitious apprentices could eventually challenge for master status through elaborate competitions judged by guild leaders. These weren't casual skill demonstrations. They were serious tests that could make or break entire careers. A textile apprentice might be required to weave a complex pattern from memory, while a metalworker might have to create a finished piece using only basic tools. Guild membership brought social status that extended far beyond commercial success. Master craftsmen were respected community leaders whose opinions carried weight in local politics. Some guild leaders became wealthy enough to own multiple properties and maintain households that rivaled minor nobility. But guild power also meant guild politics, and these could get pretty intense. Different guilds sometimes competed for the best market locations, leading to disputes that required intervention from market supervisors. The Obsidian Blade Guild and the Metal Tool Guild had a legendary rivalry over who could claim certain prime selling spots, resulting in negotiations that dragged on for months. Weather management became a crucial skill for market operations, since everything happened outdoors. Rain could destroy textile displays, wind could scatter lightweight merchandise, and excessive heat could spoil food products faster than vendors could sell them. Smart merchants developed elaborate systems for protecting their goods from whatever nature decided to throw at them. The most successful vendors invested in portable shelters that could be assembled quickly when storms threatened. These weren't simple tarp systems. They were sophisticated structures that could be packed efficiently for transport, but provided real protection when deployed. Some vendors became famous for their ability to set up weather protection faster than their competitors. Seasonal weather patterns created predictable challenges that experienced merchants learned to anticipate. During rainy season, certain types of merchandise became almost impossible to display properly, while dry season brought dust problems that could damage delicate items. The most adaptable vendors adjusted their product mix based on weather forecasts that relied on traditional knowledge passed down through generations. Temperature control was particularly important for food vendors, who needed to keep products fresh throughout long market days. Some developed ingenious cooling systems using clay pots and evaporation techniques that could keep produce fresh for hours longer than simple shade alone. Others specialized in preserved foods that could handle temperature extremes without spoiling. The most innovative weather management came from vendors who turned climate challenges into competitive advantages. During hot days, sellers of cooling drinks and shade-producing items saw their business boom. Smart entrepreneurs learned to stock weather-appropriate merchandise that other vendors might not think to carry. Storage solutions within the market itself became a specialized service industry. Not every vendor could afford to transport all their merchandise to and from the market every few days, so professional storage services developed to meet this need. These weren't just simple warehouses. They were secure facilities that protected goods from theft, weather, and pest damage. The most reliable storage facilities offered different service levels depending on what customers needed. Basic storage might just provide covered space and minimal security, while premium services included individual locked compartments, pest control, and even insurance against loss or damage. Some storage operators became wealthy simply by providing reliable space in convenient locations. Security for stored goods required sophisticated systems that could protect valuable merchandise without making retrieval too complicated for legitimate owners. Storage operators developed identification systems using tokens, passwords, and physical descriptions that prevented unauthorized access while allowing quick retrieval during busy market periods. Location mattered enormously for storage facilities, since merchants needed to access their goods quickly when customers showed interest. The most valuable storage spaces were those closest to prime market areas, and competition for these spots could get fierce. Some storage operators built their entire business model around securing the best locations and charging premium prices for convenience. Professional relationships between vendors created informal networks that often mattered more than formal guild memberships. Merchants who sold complementary products would develop partnerships that helped both businesses succeed. A pottery vendor might work closely with food vendors who needed attractive serving dishes, creating mutually beneficial arrangements that increase sales for everyone involved. These business relationships often extended beyond simple commercial transactions into personal friendships that lasted for decades. Successful merchants understood that treating competitors fairly and maintaining good relationships could lead to opportunities that purely competitive approaches might miss. When rare merchandise became available, well-connected vendors often heard about it first. Information sharing within these networks created competitive advantages that could make the difference between profit and loss. Merchants would share intelligence about customer preferences, upcoming demand for specific products, and changes in supply availability. This informal intelligence network helped smart vendors anticipate market trends before their competitors caught on. Trust became the foundation currency that made these relationships work. Merchants who consistently honored their agreements and dealt fairly with partners could access opportunities and information that weren't available to less reliable vendors. Reputation spread through the merchant community faster than official announcements, making trustworthiness more valuable than immediate profit. The most successful merchant networks included vendors from different specialties who could provide comprehensive service to major customers. A wealthy buyer looking to furnish a new household could work with connected merchants who would coordinate deliveries, negotiate package deals, and ensure that everything arrived on schedule. These service networks created customer loyalty that individual vendors couldn't match. Innovation in product development happened constantly, as vendors looked for ways to differentiate their offerings from competitors. Craftsmen experimented with new techniques, materials, and designs that could command premium prices from customers looking for unique items. The market environment encouraged creativity in ways that isolated workshops never could. Some of the most successful innovations came from vendors who combined traditional techniques with materials or ideas acquired through long-distance trade. A textile maker might incorporate exotic dyes obtained from distant regions, creating color combinations that local competitors couldn't duplicate. These innovations often became signature products that defined entire careers. Competition drove quality improvements that benefited everyone in the market ecosystem. When customers could easily compare similar products from multiple vendors, craftsmen had strong incentives to maintain high standards and develop better techniques. The market served as a natural quality control system that rewarded excellence and punished mediocrity. Customer education became an important part of successful selling, especially for complex or unfamiliar products. Vendors learned that explaining the benefits and proper use of their merchandise could justify higher prices and create more satisfied customers. The most skilled salespeople became teachers who helped customers understand what they were buying. The market's influence on fashion and social trends extended throughout the entire region. When wealthy customers adopted new styles or preferences, word spread through the merchant networks faster than formal communication systems. Vendors who could quickly adapt to changing tastes often achieved success that lasted for years. The great market of Tenochtitlan wasn't just a place to buy and sell. It was the living, breathing heart of one of history's most sophisticated civilizations. When Spanish conquistadors first witnessed this incredible commercial machine in action, they realized they weren't dealing with simple natives, but with master organizers who'd created something that rivaled anything in Europe. From cocoa bean currencies to guild politics, from weather management to waste disposal, the Aztecs had solved problems that modern cities still struggle with. The next time you're fighting crowds at a shopping mall, remember that 500 years ago, people were doing it better with 60,000 customers and not a single cash register in sight.